Intentionally so, because when we take a look at the resource tabs, the Protoss is actually a little bit ahead of Artosis. Artosis hasn't really gotten the chance to make that many drones. If we look back here, he had 26 drones before this battle started. Now he's at 23, because, you know, we can see he's having to make another spine crawler. He's down a queen. He doesn't really have that many Zerglings out. Looks like 4 total. 2 in the main. Can't even find the other 2. Just very, very, very low on units. And this Protoss is still barreling in. The one thing that's a little disappointing is sometimes when players 4 Warp Gate, they get so overeager to win with the 4 Warp Gate that they kind of sacrifice making a lot of probes. And honestly, you can make probes if you 4 Warp Gate and get your gases early enough. So, either way, all I'm trying to say is that a 4 Warp Gate is really scary, and Artosis took a pretty big hit there. He's barely defended. I mean, he's not even mining gas here. He has a Hydralisk den, but no Hydralisks have even been made. Is he even started to rebuild his second queen? No, it doesn't look like he has. Still making more spine crawlers. Just has 1 geyser mining at this point, and still more units streaming in here from Yong. And all Artosis has is a bunch of Zerglings, and this really is not enough Zerglings to be able to deal with this. The Zealots do quite a lot of damage to Zerglings. So, ordinarily, you would look at this situation and go, ugh, a Zerg, kind of, ugh. Now, Artosis has a pretty solid way of playing, and you can actually describe it relatively easily. He is, whoa, my Gatorade is encroaching in there. It's a pretty simple way of playing. You basically expand and just hang out, make a lot of drones, like a lot of drones. You get Zergling speed, just in case, and then you get Hydralisks, take a 3rd base, and then get +1/+1, and your roaches. That's pretty much it. So early expand with Zergling speed, then get Hydralisks, then expand and get a Roach Warren, and +1/+1 upgrades for your Hydras and Roaches. Really, really simple way of playing. Simple description. There's a lot of, subtlety there, but a pretty simple, straightforward goal with that. And the big, hard part of this is, when do I fit in all these drones? Because you need to make a lot of drones, because Hydralisks are really expensive. I mean, you can get a ton of larvae with 2 queens, and you need just an absurd economy to be able to support mass Hydralisk production. So, what Artosis looks like he's doing here is, looks like, he's in a little bit of a panic state. Whenever I say panic state, I don't want to imply that there's some nerd sweating profusely at his computer just going, oh my god! Not that I haven't been there before, but still, Artosis, is in a mode where he really cannot afford to make more drones. Still looking at the production tab, still 23 drones. Has not made many drones in a while. And looks like, is another queen going to fall? Oh, that would be so tragic. Not a big Zergling force at all. Going to be easily dealt with by this small force here, especially if he can get some good force fields off. But it looks like he's just going to be attacking pretty good force fields. Looks like the weakened Zealots are getting a chance to stay alive. These Hydralisks come out. Oh my god, barely saving the day. Or, yeah, it looks like maybe not quite saving the day at all. Fortunately, Hydras are very fast on creep, so you can do a lot of the micromanagement, and he thusly does so. But I call this a crisis mode because, again, you need to be making drones at this point, and you're not. You're just making a whole bunch of units. You're feeling very, very pulled back. Look, more spine crawlers going down. I mean, poor Artosis really hasn't got the chance to make any of the workers that he's wanted to. His queens are pretty low on the money, so he's maintaining, pretty low on the mana, so they're maintaining pretty decent focus. Protoss looks like he's finally pulling back, going to resource station. Still pretty even. Has even gotten a cannon up here to defend. Again, I'm very disappointed he hasn't been adding on more probes, because you kind of can. But either way, what makes a Zerg player good, or what makes any player good, is their ability to deal with some sort of blunder on their part, or if their opponent is putting a ton of pressure on. We like to say that, a good player deals with variety well, but again, Artosis' play is pretty straightforward. He's getting Hydralisks now, yeah, and I'm going to guarantee you his goal is to take a 3rd base, which is going to be this one, and then to get Roaches and +1/+1. Very simple. Yeah, he's throwing speed in there, but everything I've said so far is pretty much the essentials. So, Artosis is going to snap back from this very comfortably. I'm going to open up the production tab. He's going to be getting some Hydralisks at first, just some Hydralisks, so that way he can, again, defend from some sort of gigantic bust-in. But then he's going to go back to making drones. Artosis got the chance to poke in here, going to the Artosis cam. Let's just grab this Overlord. And what has he seen? Yep, he sees a pylon going down here, and look, already in the production tab, making more drones. And this is what signals that you're against a very good Zerg player. The Zerg player who dealt with this insane, crazy crisis, built all these spine crawlers. Oh, looks like the spine crawlers were even moving up here. Had to play really defensively, wasn't mining gas from here, didn't have this geyser up, didn't have this geyser up, didn't have these Evo chambers up, didn't have really much of anything up, was just making Zerglings, and then right after he defends, gets right back on track. Now, when I say back on track, he's not doing the exact same thing. This is what makes a player good and flexible. Notice that Artosis is getting these +1/+1 upgrades. He is getting them, but he's getting the +1/+1, and he's getting the Roach Warren before he takes this third base. Normally, the way you look when you're Zerg is you take this third base, and then you come back and you build this +1/+1. You make about this many early Zerglings, and then you run in there much earlier and kill off the destructible rocks. These Zerglings had to play defensively because there was a giant 4 warp gate push happening. But even though Artosis might look like he's doing something different, his normal plan, to get a whole bunch of Expos and Hydras and Roaches up, is still the same. He's just ordering it a little bit differently. So Yang, I think, has had a fairly impressive comeback from his early, I guess, self-imposed deficit, where he just wasn't making any probes here for the longest time. And now he's getting the +1, the 4 warp gates are still hanging around. But here's the robotics facility, getting ready to get some Colossi here. There's Artosis' hatchery going down as well. So, yeah, it looks like he's getting some burrow, getting some of his later stage plans, but the most important thing to note is that everything Artosis is doing up to this point has been, everything after the attack has been as though there was no huge warp gate push that happened in the first place. Just more drones. Getting the evolution chambers before the expansion is pretty much the only big adjustment. Everything else is just playing catch-up. And Artosis is running around with as many Zerglings, just doing a little bit of spotting. Here comes some Roaches now. Again, Roaches are cheaper than Hydralisks, so you can get a lot of Roaches if you have a ton of larvae. And again, you don't really need too many Hydralisks. And a Hive coming up from Artosis, pretty awesome. Now, I just want to state that after this point, Artosis is going to do something very cool and unique. Not something I've seen really any player do for the longest time. Or should I say ever. So what Artosis is going to do later on, we'll get to in a minute. I talked a lot about this in a lot of the Braddock games that we checked out last week. We got to see some Swab Terran play from Russia. And here we have Artosis doing some cool Zerg stuff. It's about chunking, that's what I say, is you kind of group stuff into just a chunk. So for instance, what I would say is going on in the middle chunk of Artosis' play is 3 bases, +1/+1, Hydra Roach. Really simple. 3 things. And honestly, I like things in 3s, right? I like, 3 expansions, +1/+1, Hydra Roach. That's about it. And you can put in little stuff like, oh, Overlord speed. Oh, maybe I can get some extra Zerglings here to check this. Should I get a second Queen? Maybe I could actually get an Overseer and do stuff with that. I don't care about any of that. That's little fine-grained detail. That are what I would call stylistic choices. Apparently, by pulling my cheeks down really far, stylistic choices. So I'm not too concerned about that. But that's like the middle chunk that I see. And the early game chunk is really the interesting part about the 2 games we're looking at today. Artosis' ability to just deal with weird early aggression. He took the gas and then 4 warp gates got thrown at him. Well, always obnoxious to deal with. He made a ton of Zerglings, had to make a ton of spine crawlers, lost a Queen, almost lost 2, didn't have any gas mining for the longest time, and when he finally defends, he just gets +1/+1, gets Hydras, and gets his Expo up. And now he's getting Roaches. Really, really cool, smooth recovery. No sort of panicking going on, not making way more Hydras than are necessary, not trying to do some sort of crazy counteroffensive, just going back to this very Artosis-like style of just sort of biding your time, expanding, and making your opponent come to you. Now let's talk about this late game chunk that Artosis is doing, and that is to get the Infestation Pit relatively early, and then to get this Hive up for Ultralisks. And I'm not quite going to go into the Ultralisks yet. I'm going to say that they turn out to be quite a brilliant choice against this composition that we're going to see Yang get. But everything leading up to it, you can just think of as these chunks. I mean, for instance, if your early game as Zerg wanted to revolve around getting an ultra-fast layer, like the fastest layer known to man, so you could get Mutalisks to do some harassment with air, and you made a bunch of Spine Crawlers for defense, cool. You can still transition into this